कुछ समझने की कोशिश कर रहे हो तुम?
नहीं, मैं समझ गया और भी लेटर।
एक ही कोर्स है, करोगे? ज्वाइन करोगे? इट्स अ 10 week कोर्स ऑन सूर्य नमस्कार। ठीक है, सी स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम 18th, फ्री ऑनलाइन कोर्स। वो वहीं से जहाँ से मेडिटेशन का कोर्स किया वहाँ से। तो इसको मैं जब अभी कल रात को है, ये लेट नाइट है। अरे
स्टार्ट करता हूँ।
या Good morning. Namaskar. Welcome to the second session of MMPC 012 Strategic Management. I'm Dr. Siran Mukerji, Additional Director, IGNOU Regional Center, Noida. Now, if you recall, or those of you who had attended, if you recall, we were doing, in the first session, we were discussing block 1, Introduction to Strategic Management, in which we had discussed the concept of strategy. Today we move on from where we had left last week, and we discuss concept of strategy, we will discuss policy. And we compare strategy with policy, then we move on to discussing strategic framework and also strategy in global context. Yeah, if you remember, we had left here. We had completed our previous session at this point, wherein we had discussed the characteristics of 3 levels of strategies. That is the corporate strategy, the business level strategy, and the functional strategies. And we had done a very good comparative study between the 3 levels of strategies. Now we move on to policy. Now, we have already discussed enough about strategy. Now we'll see what was strategy. Strategy was plan of action. Whereas now, what is a policy? Most of us sometimes we think that strategy and policy, they are similar, but they are actually not similar. They sound similar. We feel they are similar because maybe we get confused with the meaning of both strategy and policy, but they are not really similar. Strategy, as we all know, it is a plan of action, whereas policy is what? We say the policy of this company is very good. Now, what does that mean? It means it is a set of rules and procedures that the company needs to follow in order to achieve the goals and objectives. So, when we are saying it is a set of rules and regulations, written documented in the documented form, then it becomes a part of the strategy. So what is a policy? As I already said, it is a when I'm saying documented, so it is a formal statement. It is a formal document. It is not an informal communication. It is part of the formal communication. It is a formal statement outlining the guiding principles and procedures required for the organization to follow to achieve the goals and objectives and one manage the operations. As I already said, policies are basically they are formal, so they are documented, and you must have heard that there's a company policy manual or policy handbook. So on various aspects of functioning in the organization. So these are all documented. They are in the form of manuals or handbooks. And again, they are not really the policies are not permanent, they are not static, they have to be reviewed, they are updated, there's regular updation of the policies, or I would not say really regular, but it is periodical updation of the policies depending on the changes in the external and internal environment of the organization, and also depending on the organizational goals, because ultimately policies are basically they are the procedures. They are written rules, regulations, procedures which the organization needs to follow for doing what? For achieving the goals, for achieving the objectives, for fulfillment of the goals and achievement of the objectives. So, depending on how the goals are getting amended, how the goals are getting modified with the period of time, the policy will also keep on getting updated or amended or modified. See, examples of policy, like we have code of conduct, that's very simple. Every organization, whether it's in the public sector or in the private sector, or even in case of public-private partnerships, there is always a code of conduct or the ethics policy. Like, nowadays you must have heard there is this CSR, corporate social responsibility of the organization. Now, depending on that, again, there are, every organization has got the social environmental policy, then it has got the uh, normal environmental social policy, there are environmental policies. So depending on the the setup, the external environment where the organization is functioning, we have different kinds of ethical policies. Then there also another example is equal opportunity anti-discrimination policy. Then there is, workplace safety, health and safety policies. Then there are also, internet or email usage policies. Like you must be knowing, there are some organizations, for example banks, wherein, they have, the employees are having, they have their own email IDs given, assigned to them by the bank. Now they're not supposed to use that email ID for, let's say, for any kind of personal interaction, any kind of personal communication. Then there are, of course, HR policies, there are industrial relation policies. Now, also the organizations have social media policies. So, depending on where and at what scale the organization is operating, what scale the organization is functioning, whether it is at the domestic level or it is at the international level or it is at the multinational level, the policies are there, they are in place, and they are formal procedures which the organization and its employees have to follow in order to achieve the goals and objectives. Now you see the difference between the strategy and policy. As I said, strategy is basically plan of action, whereas policies are the guidelines. Strategy is specification, they are specific plans. Policies are the principles. Then strategy, they are flexible, because the top management, we had studied last week, the top management will formulate the strategies. So the strategies, again, they are not fixed, they have to be flexible depending on the environmental analysis, the results of the environmental analysis. Whereas the policies, for that point of time, at that point of time, the policies are fixed, except, like as I said, barring some situations, some areas. Like for example, as I gave you an example of sustainability and environmental policy. Now this, let's say we have, let's take the example of the North India. In winters we have so much of pollution. So in the, during that season, during that time, the company policies have to be amended, keeping in view the environmental rules, the regulations, the acts which are being implemented for that period. Let's say for a month, for 1.5 months, for 2 months, till the time there is so much of pollution, environmental pollution. So the moment we see that, the smog, the winter is get coming to an end, the smog is clearing, then those rules and regulations, they are lifted by the government, and accordingly the company has to revise its policy. That was a simple example I gave you, that the nature of the policy as such remains fixed, it doesn't keep on changing regularly, but in certain circumstances, depending on the environmental situation, depending on the environmental analysis, it changes. Now application, the application of strategy is obviously, it is related to the decisions made by the organization for future. Now strategy is future oriented, whereas policy is for the present, when we are implementing, when we are doing our work, when we are implementing the strategies, that time, accordingly the policies, they are implemented. Then what is that in terms of direction strategies, they are action oriented, and these are policies are decision oriented. The formulation of strategy, again, we saw that there are three levels of strategy. Depending on the levels of strategy, the formulation of strategy is done, whereas policies are always, because these are formal documents which are implemented from the top to the bottom, and it is applicable for everyone in the organization. So it is basically, who does it, who formulates it, it's always the top management formulates the policies, and then it gets percolated, it moves down the levels in the organization. Now the strategy, it covers the external environment, whereas policy is entirely for the depends on the internal environment, that is the internal functioning of the organization. Strategy, it is the plan of action. As I've already told you, it is a plan of action for achieving the goals and objectives of the organization, whereas policy are the do's and don'ts. In simple terms, these are the do's and don'ts of the organization. Now we come to another very important terminology when we study strategic management, that is tactics. Now, what are tactics? Like you must have heard, there is something like top level management, strategic management, top level strategic management, and then there are also middle level management, and then we call as the third level, that is the operational level management, or for that matter, we sometimes it's also called tactical decisions. Top level decisions, middle level decisions, and tactical decisions. So what are tactics? Tactics in a business organization are the small plans or the micro strategies. They are also strategies. Tactics are also strategies, but they are micro strategies. They are relevant for individual levels in the organization. So they are basically individual level based micro smaller strategies, and all these tactics or the micro strategies or the smaller plans, they all combine to form the top level strategy. They all combine to form the organizational strategy. So tactics are organizational tactics or small plans. They are developed based on the overall organizational strategy. So they have to be converging, they have to be not related, but basically they are part of the overall organizational strategy. They help in achieving the objectives and goals of the organization. And what kind of goals these have to be? We generally say that the organization or an efficient or effective manager has to kind of implement SMART goals. Now, what are SMART goals? S stands for specific, M for measurable, A is achievable. Now, such kind of goals which the organization, the employees can achieve. These, then they're relevant and they are time based. So the organization should have SMART goals, and these SMART goals help in creating the effective business tactics, and these business tactics, depending on the organizational functioning, they help in achieving the goals, the objectives, and they help in execution of the organizational strategies. Now, the difference between strategy and tactics, I think it would be very clear, but we'll still quickly go through it. Strategies are long term developmental plans, developmental goals, whereas tactics are short term. Strategies determines the major plans, whereas tactics, as I said, they are what? They're again strategies, but they are smaller strategies. They're the micro level strategies. Individual, let's say, not even within the organization, not even within the department. Within the department, suppose there are smaller units, so tactics would be unit level strategies. Then strategic decisions, since we know that they are being formulated at the top level, so they cannot be delegated, whereas tactics can be delegated. One person is not able to perform a particular work, that work can be given to his colleague to do it and to complete that work. So but strategic decisions, these are important decisions. These are the decisions which make or break the organization. It so they cannot be delegated. However, They can be broken down into smaller level strategies, smaller level tactics, which can be delegated for individual units, for individual, and within the units for the individual employees. Now, strategic formulation again is a continuous process. Why it's a continuous process? Because as we saw earlier, it is based on the environmental changes. It is based on how the organization is growing, how the organization, which way is the organization moving. So depending on that, the strategic formulation is done, and it is a continuous process. Because if we suppose we formulate the strategy once, and then we say that no, we don't need to do it anymore, so then we become static. That means we are making ourselves closed, and if we are in a closed system, we cannot function. So strategic formulation is continuous, based, as I've mentioned here, based on new opportunities, whereas tactics are periodical, depending on the changes that are happening in the in the strategies at the organizational level strategies. Depending on that, the tactics have to be modified. Then strategic decisions involve uncertainty, obviously, because they are dependent on the external environmental analysis, whereas tactical decisions are fairly certain. Fairly certain because that is implementing. It is basically execution. It is basically functionalizing the organizational strategies so as to achieve the goals and objectives. See, here I have two examples here. First example is, for example, company gets to know through internal channels or internal feedback that the employees, they feel isolated, they feel they feel that they are not being involved in the organizational activities. They feel that they are lacking engagement. So that is, let's say, the organizational a problem that has come up. Now, what would be the tactics? Tactics would be, now this is at a very internal, lower level problem. So the tactics would be to implement engagement tactics. Now, employee engagement tactics. So employee engagement, as you know, this employee not feeling engaged, that could be not organization wide, it could be a small unit. Within a unit or a department, the employees might feel that we getting isolated, we are not being involved, nobody's communicating with us. We feel a kind of being neglected. So that would not be an organization wide problem. So in order to solve that, what would we have? We'll have unit wise, or let's say that particular department wise tactics. And that tactics could be, let's say, hire an external consultant, or hire a person from the HR department of the company itself, or HRD department, person from the human resource development department, who would then come and discuss and see why the employees are feeling less engaged, and then he or she might suggest some employee engagement activities in order to bring all the employees into the mainstream, and to enhance the communication, so that the employees, they feel that yes, they are being giving in attention, and they are being involved in the organizational activities. Another example I've taken here is, let's say, the strategy is, or let's say the goal of the there's a particular goal, organizational goal, that is to gain 5,000 new followers on every social media platform by the end of the year. Suppose the organization decides that we have to have 5,000 new followers on every social media channel platform by the end of the year. Now this could be the goal of the organization, one of the goals of the organization. Now, in order to achieve that, the tactics could be create social media campaign, ads to increase engagement on posts, publishing 20 new social media posts per week to increase overall engagement, collaborating with social media, like we might engage influencers, social media influencers, to do one live video per week that highlights the organizational products or services that the organization is providing, or let's say the overall highlights of the organization. Or it could also be repurposing the weekly blog posts a week to share on social media. So these are what, as you see, These are not company or organization wide tactics. These are smaller tactics. These are so many of them. Like in case of the second example, there are what, one, two, three, four tactics that I've suggested here. And combined jointly, they will help to increase the number of followers. Now, the differences between the strategy and tactics. Tactics-based strategy basically helps in controlling the resources, whereas tactics helps in achieving the success of in the organization. Strategy, I've already told you, top and it is concerned with the formulation is done at the top and middle level management, whereas tactics are at all levels. Strategy, as I told you, that they are flexible, they are continuous process depending on the environmental analysis, both internal and external analysis, whereas tactics are fixed and periodic. Once the work is complete, once, let's say, this particular example I've given, 5,000 new followers have been engaged in every followers have been engaged in every social media by the end of the year. So then, obviously, if that was the goal that has been achieved, so then it will change. We'll have a new set of goals for the organization. So naturally, it is short term, whereas strategies are long term. Level of certainty is very high, whereas in case of tactics, it is low. And environment, strategy is related to the external environment, tactics are related to the internal environment. Now we go to the second unit
Okay,
of
I
the
found this
first
on the
block.
web 4 is very high, whereas in case of tactics, it is lower in environment. Strategy is related to the external environment, tactics and led to the internet.
And next we move to the second unit, that is the strategic framework. Now, this is the second unit of the first block. Now we begin. Now I will not discuss strategy because we've already discussed that in detail. Strategy, policy, tactics, goals, objectives, all this we have discussed in detail in the first unit. I'm straight away moving on to the strategic management process. Now, what are the features of strategic management process? Obviously, since strategy is continuous for the organization, strategy formulation is continuous for the organization, naturally the strategic management process is also a continuous process. That is what the top level management is actually required to do. They have to continuously manage the strategies of the organization so as to achieve its organizational goals and objectives. Then, strategic management process, another very important feature of this particular process is that it is based on the desirable future position of the organization. Like for example, the organization is looking at, let's say, expansion. So, and expansion and also increasing the sales by, as a result of expansion, increasing the sales by 20%. Now, that is the desirable future position. That is the position where the top level management sees itself reaching in, let's say, next 3 years. So, based on that, the strategic management process will be done. Then it is, again, as I told you, it is based on both internal and external environment. So, depending on what changes we are seeing outside our organization, depending on what changes we see internally within the organization, we will be we'll be managing the process of strategic management. And then it links the organizational strength with the environmental opportunities. As I said, it is based on external environment. Why do we keep on looking at the external environment? We keep on looking at the external environment because external environment gives us ideas, it gives us opportunities to think that from here, where do we move next, or where should we be moving, where we should be placed in, let's say, next 5 years. So it links the organizational strength with environmental opportunities, and it also helps in taking decision regarding the resource allocation. Now, the process of strategic management, there are basically, it is a very detailed process, and there are 6 phases. 6 phases, 6 steps in the strategic management process: the strategic intent, strategic analysis, strategy formulation, then choice of strategy, strategy implementation, and then finally No implementation process is complete without evaluation and control. So let's now move on to the first process, that is the strategic intent. Now, when we mean intent, what do we mean by intent? Intent is like the intention, it's basically the desired position where we want the organization to be. So it is the desired direction which the organization adopts to drive its operation towards achievement of expected outcomes. So for achieving the expected outcomes, what is our intention? That is, what is our intent? What is our direction? That is basically, that is the first step. That is the identifying that intent, that identifying that direction is the first step in the strategic management process. And it is just not one level. So strategic intent is basically, there is a hierarchy. It is multi-level. So what is the hierarchy? Strategic intent consists of vision, that is expectation, then core values and purpose. Then the third level is organizational mission, which means, like, we say mission of the organization. What is the mission of the organization? It is basically the essential purpose of the organization, particularly why it is in existence. Then why do we exist? Like we say, mission of our life. That is, what does it mean? It means, why do we exist? Why are we existing? Like, sometimes you will hear people saying, I don't understand the mission of my life. What does that mean? That means I don't understand, why do I exist? Similarly, at the organizational level also, every organization has a mission. And that mission, identifying the mission, uh, putting it in words, defining the mission, organizational mission, that is part of the strategic intent. Then the fourth level of the hierarchy of strategic intent is identifying the objectives, the which are obviously the short term, and then defining goals, the long term goals of the organization. So, and finally, the fifth level of the hierarchy in case of strategic intent, because strategic identification of strategic intent, that is the direction of the organization in which it will be moving, that is basically the consisting of a whole chain, or let's say levels, which begins with the overall vision, that is the expectation, state or position that the organization wants to fulfill. That is the point where the organization, what the organization wants to become, or where the organization wants to reach. That would be the vision. Then, depending on the vision, we'll have the core values and the purpose of the organization. That is why the organization exists, the purpose. Then based on the purpose, we have the mission of the organization. That is the essential purpose of the organization, particularly the reason for its existence. Depending on the vision, the values, the mission, we will define we means the top level management in the organization will define the organizational objectives and goals. Now, once the organizational objectives and goals have been defined, they have been delineated, then we formulate the strategy. Now, what is strategy? We've already discussed it, but here I've just put it in few words. It is a unified, comprehensive, integrated plan for achieving the organizational goals and objectives. Comprehensive, all encompassing. It covers the entire organization, and it is integrated. Why? Because it is a single plan of action for the entire organization. Now, once the strategic intent is defined, it is developed. That is vision, core values and purpose, mission, objectives, goals, strategy. All this is in place. Next step is analysis, the strategic analysis. Now, analysis of what? It is basically, as I told you, formulation of strategy is entirely dependent on the analysis of the internal organizational environment and the external environment. Now, internal analysis would be what? As I said, internal organizational environment. It is basically all those dimensions, all those factors affecting a particular organization. Now, internal analysis would be analysis of all the resources. Analysis of, when I say resources, so I include everything: finance, material resources, human resources, research and development. We do analysis of the entire organization internally, and external analysis would be what factors affecting the organization from outside. So that could be your political analysis of the political environment, the legal environment, socio-cultural environment. So depending on that, we get to know the opportunities that could come for the organization, and accordingly we formulate the strategy. Now, what are the major components of strategic analysis? Conduct the environmental analysis, internal, external, both. Assess existing strategies. So once we have in place the report which tells us about how our internal environment is at present and how the external environment at present, and from now how it would be, depending on that we will check whether the present set of strategies, plan of action that exists in the organization, whether with those strategies, whether implementation of those strategies will result into the fulfillment of goals. If yes, we just implement and we move on. That means we are rightly placed. But in case we see that the existing strategies do not take us to the mission, does not help us in becoming the organization that we are envisioning, that means there is something wrong. Then in that case we have to modify, we have to evaluate the strategies, present strategies, and then we have to modify the strategies, or else we try to we try to formulate fresh set of strategies. So the third step, a third component is evaluation of various strategic alternatives and then adopt the most viable strategy. Now, the first step, that is conducting the environmental analysis. So environmental analysis is basically done by number of methods, but here I am going to discuss with you only in brief because we have this in detail later on. There are two very commonly used methods for techniques or methods for environmental analysis. One is SWOT, that is analysis of the strengths of the organization, weaknesses of the organization, opportunities of the organization, and threats coming from for the organization. Now, sometimes nowadays, threat is considered to be a very negative term. So sometimes the word threat is also replaced by the word challenges. So challenges kind of gives us a more positive direction. Threat comes to be as if there is there is an external environmental threat, and which will because of which we will perish. No, we don't consider the changes that are happening in the external environment as threat to us. No, they are basically challenges which gives us the opportunities for improving, which gives us the opportunities for forging ahead in the right and better direction. Then we have the PESTLE, the second way of analyzing the environment, that is political environment analysis, economic, socio-cultural, technological, legal, and ecological. So based on this six environmental levels of analysis, we get to know how our environment is, and accordingly whether our strategies are suited to meet the challenges coming from this environment, or else we need to formulate fresh set of strategies. And depending on that, what we do, we try to find out the various alternatives that the organization can take, and depending on the various alternatives and the resources that the organization has, we try to identify the most viable alternative. Now, strategic formulation, the steps involved, as I told you, there are the strategic management process has got 6 steps. So, first one was strategic intent, we discussed. Second one was strategic analysis. Third is the strategic formulation. Now, strategic formulation, what are the steps? Steps involved are developing the missions and objectives of the organization based on the strategic intent. That is the first step. Based on the strategic intent, we develop the missions and objectives of the organization. Then, the second step is to do the SWOT analysis. That is, to analyze the strengths of the organization, to analyze the weaknesses of the organization, to do an analysis of the opportunities that can be availed of by the organization, and then also the upcoming threats from the external environment. We do a thorough analysis of the environment based on the SWOT analysis, and then based on the SWOT analysis, we generate the various alternative strategies. So we develop the various alternative strategies, and then based on the internal analysis, based on the external analysis, we choose, and also based on the missions and objectives of the organization, we choose a particular strategy. And how do we choose that particular strategy? We choose such a strategy which helps us in finally achieving our strategic intent. Now, the fourth step in strategic management process is the choice of strategy. Now, choice of strategy, we have various alternatives, strategic alternatives, and the strategic alternatives are matched with the problem of the organization. Problem means, problem, don't take it as a negative term. Any situation which warrants making a decision, that is basically a problem. So based on the various problems faced by the organization, that is the opportunities which we want to avail of, we have a set of strategic alternatives. And then how do we choose? We choose the strategic alternative, the most viable strategic alternative, based on objective factors and the subjective factors. Objective factors, what are these objective factors? Quantitative factors, okay? That is corporate analysis, portfolio analysis. Another objective factor is the competitive analysis, that is the external. And then corporate portfolio is the internal factors, okay? Internal quantitative factors. Competitive analysis are the external factors. Who are our competitors and how they are functioning? What has been their strategies? Because once they are there, it has been implemented, we see that yes, this particular organization, this is how it is, this is the advertising strategy, this is how it is managing its resources, and this is how it is performing in the in the business environment, and this is how the customers are let's say accepting the products. So depending on that, we do the analysis and we take cues from there. And then finally, we have the industry level analysis. That is a very important factor. The entire industry, all the competitors involved, all the various resources involved, we try to do the industry analysis. And based on this, we choose the most appropriate strategy for the organization. Then we implement it. So we formulate the strategy. We have the most viable, we have chosen the most viable strategy. And then this is a very, the earlier steps were also important, but this is equally important, because in break or making or breaking of the system depends on the finally the execution or implementation of the strategy. So implementation means what? Conversion of strategies into practices. And how do we convert the strategies into practices? We convert them. Again, there are phases, there are steps. The first step is setting the goals based on the freshly formulated strategy. We develop the plan, we structure the organization structure or restructure the organization, the resources. We restructure the resources based on the goals. Now we have a fresh set of goals. So depending on how these goals will be achieved, we will restructure the organization, we will allocate the resources, we communicate these goals and plans to the, because all this is done at the top level, so then it needs to be communicated to the lower levels. So we communicate these goals and plans to the lower level employees, or we'll not really say lower level employees, we communicate the information has to officially formally communicated to the next levels down below in the organization. We motivate the employees to, we do their orientation, we orient them, we inform them, we train them to and tell them that this is why we are bringing in these changes, this is why these are the goals that we need to achieve, and this is what you are going to benefit out of it, the benefits that you derive from implementation of these goals, the benefit that the organization derives by implementation of these goals. We need to inform, we need to communicate accordingly, we need to motivate the employees, because if the employees don't see anything advantageous for them by as a result of implementation of these goals, why would they agree rather to implement these goals? They would not. They will implement these, they take up the action. And then establishment of leadership, that is who is going to lead the team in this process. Finally, the strategic evaluation and control. We go back to the first chart, process of strategic management. We saw there were 6 steps: strategic intent, strategic analysis, then we formulate the strategy, we have the set of alternatives, we choose the most appropriate alternatives based on the external internal environment, the resources that we have, then we implement it. And once we implement it, there has to be no process is complete without regular evaluation and assessment and control. Based on the results, based on the outcome of the evaluation, strategic evaluation process, we are able to control, we are able to see whether the activities that the organization is undertaking, the way it is being achieved, the way it is being implemented, whether it will lead us to the achievement of strategic intent. If we see that yes, it is taking us there, then we are on the right direction. If we see that there is some gap between the standard set and the performance, then we need to bridge this gap. And in order to bridge this gap, we need to modify our strategies. That's why I told you that strategic management process is a continuous process. It is not, it is a dynamic process. For the growth of the organization, for the development of the organization, we have to be dynamic. We have to continuously evaluate ourselves and modify ourselves based on the challenges which are being thrust upon us by the external environment. Now we move on to the third unit, that is strategy in global context. Now, what should be the strategy of the organization? We know the process, we know what is strategic management, we know what is strategy, we know what is tactics, we know the importance of strategy, we know the importance of also, continuous strategic improvement for the organization. But in the global context, not domestic market, but the international market, in the global context, what should be the strategic management process? See, it is essential, as we all know, it is essential for all organizations, whether it is domestic or global, to understand the operating environment. Now, this again, operating environment means the environment in which the organization is based, in which the organization has to operate. It could be within the country, it could be within, let's say, the state, it could be countrywide, or it could be also within a region, it could be interregional. So, based on the environment where the organization is operating, we have to develop our strategies accordingly. So, the strategies in the context of domestic market, domestic environment, the strategies would be different. When we are moving from the domestic level to the international level, the multinational level, the let's say the transnational level, the global level, the strategies would be different. Now, since now we're talking at the global level, that means we are topping we are trying to discuss at a very macro, at a very high level, at a very expanded and large level. So in this case, the analysis of business environment is all the more within the country. It is necessary because we need to, our customers within the country, they are the locals. So we have to see how their tastes, how their requirements are changing. But that would be affected by the socio-cultural, local socio-cultural environment, political environment, local legal environment, the norms and regulations, the policies, the government policies, everything. But when we are moving outside the boundaries of the country, when we are moving at a global level, then business environment analysis becomes all the more strategic, all the more crucial, critical rather, I would say. We have to identify the factors, external factors, we have to scan them, we have to monitor, continuously monitor, because the legal factors, the environment, ecological factors, let's say ecological norms, sustainability norms, they keep on changing and they're different for every nation. And they are different for every nation and they keep on changing for every nation. The acts, the rules, the regulations, the policies, they're continuously changing. So we have to keep our ears and eyes open. We have to be very extremely dynamic. We have to be very open in order to remain afloat. Not afloat. First is afloat and then to succeed. So, business environment analysis in case of global context would be again analysis of the internal environment and analysis of the external environment. Internal environment analysis would be obviously the resources of the organization, the assets of the organizations, the liabilities of the organization. Once we have a thorough understanding of our organizational environment, the internal, what kind of resources do we have, what assets do we have, what liabilities do we have. So depending on that, only we'll be able to decide whether we can move beyond beyond the current area of functioning, current area of operations. So if we see that we have enough resources, or resources we are available for us to let's say resources are available for us, then in that case we can afford to enlarge ourselves, we can afford to diversify, we can afford to expand ourselves. So depending on the resources, assets, liabilities, we try to move on, we try to do strategic management process for the in the global context. And in this case, the external environment would analysis of external environment would also be much more wider, much more expanded, because here we are doing the environmental analysis of the industry, that is all the buyers, not only at the local level, national level, international level buyers. Who are our suppliers? The suppliers within the country, the suppliers outside. When we operate outside the country, who are going to be our prospective suppliers, and whether we're going to have suppliers supplying us raw material suited for suited for the requirements or manufacturing of our goods, whether we have such kind of suppliers in those countries, who are our shareholders, who are our intermediaries. In a way, it is the analysis of external environment is the analysis of the entire gamut of stakeholders in the organization, outside the organization. Now, since It is, as I told, strategic management process at the global context is much, 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 much wider. It is much, much mega exercise. So the analysis is just not by SWOT analysis. Pestle analysis is considered to be one of the most suitable analysis methods for knowing the external environment. So as I have already told you, pestle it involves six levels of factors: the political factors of the country where we want to expand, or the countries where we want to have our business; economical factors of that of that particular country, or the group of countries, or let's say the region in which we want to expand; the social factors, the technological factors, legal factors, environmental factors, ecological factors. So we do a detailed mega level analysis, a very, very thorough analysis of all these factors. And based on these factors only, we will get to know the kind of environment where we are going to foray. Now, global strategic alternatives for business. What are the various strategic alternatives for business? Like we saw in case of strategic management process, we try to find out the various strategic alternatives. So, at the global level, there are basically three strategic alternatives for business internationalization. That is for functioning, for let's say expanding in the countries abroad. So for making our operations global, multi-domestic. Now, what do we mean by multi-domestic? So decentralize operational decisions and activities to each nation where it is operating to customize the products and services. For example, the automobile industry. What do we do? What we will do, we will customize the products. In case of multi-domestic business, a global strategic alternative, it is a strategic option. The what we try to do is we try to decentralize the decisions and activities depending on the nation. So if suppose we say that we are going to we plan to expand, or we internationally, let's say within the SAARC region. So we would what would we try to do? We'll try to decentralize the operations at a local level in each of these countries. So that becomes domestic, let's say within each of the countries. That is multi-domestic. It's not, let's say, not just within India. It would be all other SAARC nations. Domestic operations in each of these countries. Then we have the second strategy, that is the global. Global is what? Offers standardized products and services using integrated operations. The operations are all integrated. For example, the high-end mobile industry. Very, very high-end mobile industry. What does it do? It does not, it will launch one particular, I would not like to name it, but it will launch one particular variant of the mobile, one particular device, and that will be a standardized product, and it will be, the organization will be selling that particular mobile, very high-end mobile, in all the different countries will have the same features. That is a global strategy. The third is transnational. Now, transnational is basically, it's a combination of multi-domestic and global strategies. So what does it mean? Multi-domestic. So we will see what are the requirements of each of the countries in the region, and at the same time, what we will do, we will also see the global strategy. So what does it mean? It is basically integrating the multi-domestic and global strategies by globally integrating operations while customizing products and services to the local market. For example, I've given the example of multiple version of products from the same assembly line. So let's say we have one manufacturing unit manufacturing one particular kind of a car. So that particular car will be manufactured from one manufacturing unit. Let's say a particular brand or model of a car is manufactured in Germany. Now, that particular model of the car will remain model will remain the same all throughout in all the other countries where it is going to have its business. However, based on those different markets, it's going to customize them. Let's take the country where they're going to have that particular car has got lot of snow. So naturally, there would be some specific features in the car in the same model, in the model which is going to be supplied in that country. It will have specific features for handling snow while driving. Now, the same model, suppose if it is going to be supplied to a country where there's very long extended summer period, and where, let's say, there are a lot of desert conditions. So there, the same model, let's say model X, would be supplied, but with slight variations, customizations suiting the local environment of that country. So we have three strategic options for the companies that want to internationalize, that want to globalize. First is multi-domestic. What you do, you have your own manufacturing units in each of the countries. So that's almost like, each one of them manufacturing the product domestically in that particular country. The operations are also there. Second is global. Standardized products and services are manufactured, and the same product is supplied everywhere in all the countries. Third is transnational. So what do? We might have a same assembly line manufacturing the same product for the various countries, but customizing it for the different markets, for the different customers. Now, how do we enter into the global market? We can foray into the international market through 4 ways. What are these 4 ways by which the company or let's say a business unit or an organization can globalize or move into the global markets? One is export. That means what? It does not really decentralize the manufacturing. What does it does? It manufactures the product domestically and then markets it in the various countries. So what would it mean? Basically, that means we have a centralized manufacturing unit, and from this centralized manufacturing unit, based on the requirements of the countries, based on the international market, we simply market it. So what do we need to do? We simply need to put all our efforts in marketing the products abroad. Second is licensing. As you know, license means what? It is a permit. Now, that is also a way by which a national level market, a national level company organization can move into the international market. How do we do it? By licensing. That is getting a permit to an organization in the foreign nation to use the property, that is trademark, patent, production techniques of the licensor country. So let's say there is a company X. Now it wants to do its business in country Y. So what it will do? It will go and apply for the license to operate in that particular country. So once it gets the license, then it will start its operations. Besides its parent country, it will start its operations in the other country based on the licensing country, based on the country which is giving its license. Third is a joint venture. Now, joint venture, as it shows, let's say there's a company in India which wants to operate in 3 other countries abroad. So it goes into a joint venture. Means what? It collaborates with the company in those 3 countries. And it kind of, it's a kind of joint product development, and that would be based on the local rules and regulations, the policies of that particular country. So that would be a joint venture. So what you are doing, you are not independently applying for a license in that particular country to operate independently there. Instead, you are associating yourself. You are collaborating with another company in that particular country and then developing the product based on the requirements of that particular country, based on the market requirements, based on the customers or the consumer base of that particular country. The fourth one is direct investment. Direct investment is what? Ownership of facilities in the foreign nation by transfer of resources. So what you do, you straight away you try to, that's a mega level entry in the global market. Well, uh, we would like to complete this session, the second session of strategic management today, by ending here, that is ending at the how we can enter into the global market. We will continue with this session in the next class, and we'll move on to discussing the strategic orientation in the global markets in the next class. Thank you so much. I hope you found it useful. As I said last time also, I'm saying again, please revise and do the self-assessment exercises. Thank you so much. Namaskar.